This is shocking. 2 people got shot for no reason, absolutely no reason. Alex Pretti, who was out with his cell phone camera observing what was going on and was shocked, I'm sure, to see that an ICE agent was pushing a woman into the snowbank, and he came over to try to get between them. There was a scuffle. He was in total subjugation by the officers who had him on the ground, and ICE officers, 2 of them, shot him 10 times. 10 times. That's what happened. And why aren't we all just totally shocked? That's not acceptable. The Secretary of Homeland Security, who's responsible for the training and the discipline and the mission, blows this off and says these 2 people were domestic terrorists. No accountability, no expression of sadness, no expression of remorse. How is this acceptable? First, I want to acknowledge my colleagues from Minnesota, Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar. You have conveyed to us the deep pain and anguish that you feel and that every Minnesotan feels about the shocking shootings that occurred in your state. And this follows on tragedies that occurred before this. And the pain of your community is the pain of this United States Senate. And my deep appreciation, and I know I express that on behalf of all of my colleagues, for you putting this in a human, real perspective. Thank you very much. Second, this is shocking. 2 people got shot for no reason, absolutely no reason. Renee Good, a 37-year-old mom, 3 kids, she was protesting. That officer walked from the back of her car to the side of her car to the front of her car. He shot through the front windshield and then moved to the side and shot 2 shots in the driver's side window. That's what happened. And then Alex Pretti, who was out with his cell phone camera observing what was going on and was shocked, I'm sure, to see that an ICE agent was pushing a woman into the snowbank, and he came over to try to get between them. There was a scuffle. He was in total subjugation by the officers who had him on the ground. He was disarmed, never using, by the way, or even threatening to use the gun that he had legally in his possession. And ICE officers, 2 of them, shot him 10 times. 10 times. That's what happened. And why aren't we all just totally shocked? That's not acceptable. And then that is all done with the authority of the state, with no restraint. And then the Secretary of Homeland Security, who's responsible for the training and the discipline and the mission, blows this off and says these 2 people were domestic terrorists. No accountability, no expression of sadness, no expression of remorse. How is this acceptable to any one of us here? How is that acceptable? And yet what we're hearing when we are saying, let's look into this, let's get some reforms in place that allow our citizens to feel safe, for there to be accountability, we're being told it's too complicated because we've already got a bill and we'll have to divide it. And that means procedural hassles. That means, the House will have to come back. Are we serious? That's called doing your job. It's called accountability. It's called taking responsibility. I want to pay tribute to the people of Minnesota. We're actually having a discussion about inconveniencing House members because they've got to get on a plane and come back if we act to do something that every American knows we should do. Pass the bipartisan bills where we've got 5 bills done and take on the burden of responsibility that we have as a United States Senate to put reforms in an agency that needs reform. And folks in Minnesota, it's 20 degrees below zero. They're out in the streets. They're out protesting peacefully. They're out providing coffee and cocoa and some warm soup to each other so they can get through this. Why are they doing it? You know what? They care about the right of assembly. They care about the First Amendment. They care about their constitutional rights. But the reason they're doing it is they care about each other. That's who they care about. In this United States Senate, our job is to care about every single American. And we have an agency that is totally out of control with a leader that is, I would say it's incompetent. But the cruelty of that remark, to dismiss two people, innocent people who died as domestic terrorists, tells me there's not an inkling of acceptance of responsibility that goes with the enormously important job of being Secretary of Homeland Security. So I'm not going to vote and give a blank check where we're not even willing to have a discussion about what the reforms are. And Mr. President, I want to say, I know every one of us here are shocked by what happened. This is not a Republican-Democratic deal. This is about seeing two innocent people shot. And they didn't need to be. And one of the things that's so important for us, if we have a family, we live in a community, is to act in a way where the people around us can be confident that we've got their back, that we won't hurt them or harm them, that we notice what their struggles are and we'll try to help. And all of us here have such admiration for law enforcement and the work they do, and it's such an incredibly hard job. But more than anyone else, the people contacting me in Vermont to express their shock at what happened in Minnesota are people in law enforcement. They know the job is hard, but they have accepted the responsibility to be a guardian, to be protective. We can accept our responsibility where we are the 100 people in this country, in this Senate, who have the opportunity to provide some reassurance and safety and confidence to the people each and every one of us represents. So yes, let's do our job. Mr. President, I yield back.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from California.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join my colleagues that have spoken in really saying my heart goes out to my colleagues from Minnesota, both the senior and the junior senator, and the people of Minnesota for what they have been through these last few weeks and how they have responded these last few weeks as they've mourned and as the country's been watching. January 7th feels like so long ago now, but just a few weeks ago is a day that I never would have imagined. That day, Renee Nicole Good, a mother, a daughter, a poet, was out in her community, observing, helping to document, as allowed by the law, what was happening when she was alerted about these ongoing indiscriminate raids in her community. As several of my colleagues have spoken, the administration's response to the federal agents killing Renee Good was not one of, whoa, hold on, let's really assess what's happened here. It was one of blaming her the response was so faulty by the administration. Forget the investigations that should have taken place. I'll talk about that in a minute. But when the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States respond to an incident like that by messaging to federal agents, don't worry, you have complete immunity. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, it's the opposite of the message that we should be sending if we're trying to de-escalate tensions and make sure that law enforcement abides by the law. And I remind us of that because sadly, it is not shocking when we reflect on what happened on January 24th. This time, Alex Jeffrey Pretti, a son and an ICU nurse at the local Veterans Administration hospital, was out lawfully, peacefully observing and helping document more of this ICE and CBP activity in Minneapolis. And he was shot in the back and killed. 2 United States citizens dead at the hands of federal law enforcement in the span of 2.5 weeks. They're dead because ICE and CBP have been encouraged by the White House to act with impunity. Colleagues, it was about 7 months ago that I stood here on the floor to warn all of you and the American people that the Trump administration at the time, so this will go back to last June, the Trump administration was using Los Angeles as a test case, testing how far federal agents could go in this indiscriminate, increasingly violent and cruel mass detention and deportation agenda, how far they could go before exporting this model throughout the country. I never in my life have wanted to say more than I do today that I wish I was wrong. But for the better part of the past year, communities across the country have been subjected to this relentless aggression. Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Portland, Charlotte, and others, and now Minneapolis. You've seen the videos. I've seen the videos. We've all seen the videos. How dare this administration slander the names of the dead and tell the American people not to believe what we can all see so clearly with our own eyes? How dare this administration act as if the laws passed by this body do not apply to them? And so, yes, colleagues, it is time to say enough. This is not just about immigrant families and immigrant communities now living in fear. This is about all of us. No one in this country, immigrant, citizen, veteran, should fear for their life, for exercising their constitutional rights, for standing up for their neighbors. This is not a political or policy disagreement about immigration. This is about decency. This is about humanity. And this is about the rule of law. Now, instead of pursuing independent investigations and seeking to hold officers accountable when and as warranted, this administration has doubled down. Let me take a moment on this because our colleague, Senator Kane from Virginia, talked a little bit about his experience as governor and mayor and what normally happens after an officer-involved shooting. Normal, practice, standard practice, best practice after an officer-involved shooting in a local agency, in a state agency, is not just the officer being placed on leave, but initially there's an administrative review of what happened. Was it not just consistent with policy, but the law and the Constitution? And if not, what is the consequence? Absent that, under normal circumstances, we have a civil rights division of the United States Department of Justice that can conduct an independent investigation and bring forth accountability as and when warranted. Sadly, that is not the case with this administration. Not the objective internal review, not a civil rights division of the Department of Justice review. Instead, they tell officers, you have complete immunity, and they double down. And so the abuse has continued. And by the way, it's not just on the streets. The videos you have not seen is the abuse and inhumane treatment that continues inside some appalling and inhumane private detention facilities, where colleagues, if you haven't heard, 32 detainees died last year, the most deadly year for those in ICE detention facilities in a long, long time. And an additional 6 this month alone. We're already on track to exceed last year's most deadly number. Talk about the people held in detention centers like the one that Senator Schiff and I visited just last week in California City. Many there being denied basic medical care, even urgent medical care. People denied easy access to legal counsel, to due process, to fundamental dignity. And what has the Republican majority in Congress, how have they responded to this cruel and vindictive mass deportation campaign? Silence. Inexcusable or unacceptable silence. And for those who have not been silenced, I've heard cheering on of what the administration is doing. Colleagues, since last July, there's been dozens of incidents involving excessive force by federal agents, including at least 17 shootings. Instead of asking questions and demanding accountability, our Republican colleagues here have applauded the administration and chosen to give the Department of Homeland Security billions more dollars. And now they're suggesting that DHS needs even more. How much more must our communities and our country endure before our Republican colleagues join us in saying enough? How much more, colleagues, before you agree to impose the real guardrails on a DHS that chooses to investigate itself, that stonewalls oversight, that even fights court orders to preserve evidence in the killing of an American citizen? Not destroying evidence should go without saying. It should be compelled by a federal judge, just like true, objective, independent investigations after incidents like this should go without saying. But we're not living in normal times. We continue to see ICE and CBP behave as though they are above the law. And because this administration has told them they are, and because Republicans in Congress have not told them that they're not. But we have an opportunity to change them, to collectively, on a bipartisan and bicameral basis, let those agents know no one is above the law. That is not just an opportunity, but an obligation that we have in this moment. Public safety depends on legitimacy, and legitimacy depends on accountability and speaking the truth. Our laws mean nothing if those that are assigned to enforce the laws believe that the laws don't apply to them. And so, colleagues, let's realize that we are not powerless in this conversation. Congress is a co-equal branch of government in the United States of America, and it's about time we act like it. That's why I support imposing serious reforms, real oversight, and accountability on ICE and CBP before this body provides them any more taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.